Oh, you've given her a name, I hear.
Oh, yeah. So, well, hey, it's Matt Steen, co-founder of Chemistry Staffing. This is yet another chemistry conversation, and I'm really grateful to have Karl Vaters with us. Karl, if you don't know Karl, I don't know what's wrong with you. Karl is pastor, author, and frankly, in my opinion, one of the voices that the church needs now more than ever. Does a lot of great work, especially working with smaller churches, maybe not the trendy, sexy churches that we hear all about. But I think Karl's voice is super helpful for the church today. And so, Karl, thank you so much for taking some time to talk.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. After that introduction, I don't know how I can do anything other than let you down, but I'll try.
Nice. Well, we'll try to throw you some softballs. So,
all righty.
All right, man. So you've been pastoring for approximately forever, I think, according to your bio.
Yeah, forever minus a day, not
minus
forever
a day.
And a day. Yeah.
So what are you learning these days about the church?
Oh, there's so much going. My main thing that I would look at would be this: the pandemic hasn't changed anything, but it has amplified and accelerated everything. So whatever changes were in the air, they are now at a hurricane pace. So before it might, there might have been a slow breeze of change coming through, and now batten down the hatches, it's coming through with a gusto, but it's not different. It's not new. It's just accelerated and amplified. So when that's the case, you've got to, one, it helps you understand, okay, these are not new things. These are not unheard of things. As an example, when the pandemic first hit and we had to go to our virtual online, our church had not been online before, because even though we live just 8 miles south of Disneyland, our facility is in a weird black hole for Wi-Fi service. We can't get anybody to service properly. It's really strange. Yeah. But we had to figure that out. So all of a sudden, this idea of going with live stream, which we knew was a good idea and we knew we were behind the curve on, was like, okay, this is no longer kind of a good idea. This is now an absolute necessity. Yeah. And so a lot of the things that we thought we had time to adapt to, we either have less time now or we have no time now. We've got to get on the ball. So that's the biggest change I've seen. We've gone through maybe a decade or more of change in the last 20 months.
Yeah. I've said, it's closer to 30 years, but that's just my humble opinion. And what do I know?
Yeah, you're probably closer to accurate than that. I think, because a decade would just mean 5 times, and it's sped up faster than 5 times. So it's a lot of change.
Yeah. So amplified and accelerating. I mean, where are you seeing this be the most profound? You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. It's happening. Well, right now it's happening in our ability to respond. I've noticed a handful of things about, I've talked in the last 20, 22 months, whatever it's been now, to hundreds of small church pastors. That's my area. That's, these are the people that got a hold of me right away. And as I've been talking to them, I've noticed some real clear distinctions between churches that are not just surviving, but in fact are thriving and responding well to this, and those that are collapsing or having real problems. And the couple of things that I've noticed that make the biggest difference right now, I wish I could say those that are sticking closest to the Bible and to the gospel are surviving, and those who aren't. But the fact of the matter is, there are some very good biblical churches that are in trouble, and there are some very bad unbiblical churches that are thriving. So those aren't the factors for surviving and thriving through this right now. The handful of things that I'm seeing right now that are making the big difference are, one, adaptability. Churches that have been adaptable over the years and kind of had their adaptability muscles strengthened already were able to do it. Those that had not been, those that had to start from a dead stop weren't able to do it. It was too fast for them. It bowled them over. And then secondly, those that had teams, small churches, especially those that I talked to, churches where the pastor was already doing everything, they are right now struggling, and some of them have collapsed because it's overwhelmed the pastor. I've actually had emails from small church pastors who have said, I now have people volunteering in my church who never volunteered before. Wow. Where do I put them? I don't know what to do with them because I do everything. and I can't train them right now because everything is urgent and emergency.
Right.
So those that had that already were doing well. And then those that already had resources in reserve, not just financially, but with margin. I've always taught small churches, you need to pastor for the size you are now, but you need to have systems and processes in place for double the size you are now. So the churches that did that, they had some margin. They weren't already running at 100%. And so when something increased, and when the urgency increased, and when the need for change increased, they had the margin to be able to do that. So those are some of the key differences that I'm seeing right now playing out in real time right now.
Yeah.
It's really extraordinary.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot around here. We've had people asking us how staffing has changed, and we're seeing so much of the same of what you've been talking about. We've been talking about how churches need to, their next hire needs to be pastoral, needs to be agile, and needs to be a developer, right? They need to be developing the teams. They need to be, Lord knows, they need to be flexible, and we got to get out of the specialist mindset.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
Really be so much more pastoral in this. Well, so as you're looking around, as you're talking to different churches, I mean, as you look out the horizon, what are you seeing? I mean, what comes next? I mean, we're not done with this, but what do you see out there that we need to be thinking through next?
We're in for whenever this is over, and who knows when, right? So right now we're in a spot where it's kind of like, 1 foot in the canoe, 1 foot on the shore, and we don't know how long we're going to be in this weird spot of trying to get to the next level playing field. And we thought it would be over by now, but even today I got an email from a conference I'm supposed to be doing over a year from now, and they're already considering maybe we're going to have to go virtual because we just don't know how long we're going to be in this place of stasis. So that's the reality of it for now. But when we do eventually come out of it, it reminds me of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where at the beginning of the book, it's always winter, but never Christmas. Everything's frozen over. Then Father Christmas is coming. The thaw begins. And as they're traveling across Narnia, what happens is, yes, they're seeing the buds appear between the snow. Spring is coming. It's wonderful. But then they get to a river that they used to be able to cross, and it was just sheer ice before. And now the thaw has actually brought a new danger. And now, because the river is breaking up, it's actually a extremely hazardous thing to cross. So we're in a place of kind of frozen right now. We're in a place of stasis. We don't know what's going on. We're not sure what's happening. And there are a lot of pastors who are like, I'm not going to leave the church in the middle of a pandemic. And there are a lot of husbands and wives going, I'm not going to leave my spouse in the middle of a pandemic. Employees and employers going, I'm not going to leave my job or close my business in the middle of a pandemic. Everybody's just kind of holding tight. But as soon as this shifts, we are going to see a season of 2 to 5 years minimum of more divorces, bankruptcies, evictions, homelessness, pastoral resignations, church closures than we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And I think it's going to roll in waves for minimum 2 to 5 years, probably about a decade of fallout. So the challenge for us as pastors and leaders is we really don't know when those waves are going to come or how frequently, but we can brace ourselves for them by doing some of the basics, like we talked about earlier. Get your team in place, become more adaptable, those kinds of things. So it's like when we're at the beach, when my kids were little and we brought them to the beach, I live just 3 miles from the Pacific Ocean here in California. You can feel bad for me. So we take the kids, and it's a surfing area, which means the waves are coming in pretty hard when the surf is up. So they're little kids, they got their little floaties on, and daddy's standing next to them, and they're just getting, every time a wave comes in, even a small one, they're getting knocked over. And one of the first things you had to teach them is how to brace yourself. Set your feet apart, 1 foot slightly in front of the other. The waves are coming from different directions at different times. But if you're braced for them, no matter which direction they come or what time they come, you're more likely to stay standing. So that's where our congregations need to be right now.
So, okay. So if what I'm hearing you say, is it's not going to get any easier.
No.
But at the same time, I mean, you're just describing, we've got 1 foot in the canoe, one foot on the shore, and that's an uncomfortable and exhausting place to be as well. I mean, there's some preparation that needs to happen, even, I mean, right now and in the immediate future, for us to be at a point where we can brace ourselves for this wave. So, I mean, as you're talking to pastors who, I mean, are exhausted already, I mean, how are you coaching them? What are you saying to them, as or what kind of insight are you giving them to prepare to be able to brace when this next wave comes?
Probably my most frequent piece of advice is take a nap. Uh,
Hey, man,
and
Peter took a nap and we could eat bacons. That's the holiest thing ever.
I'm telling you, man, take a nap, take at least a day, take Sabbath,
Yep.
and take vacation.
Mhm.
We have to shift. When this first began, we all went into sprint mode because
Mhm.
we were convinced this would be a few weeks. We had to adapt to the technology, and then it would be over and we'd be back to normal again. Obviously, for over a year now, we have shifted from sprint to marathon, but some pastors have not actually changed their pace
Yeah.
from a sprint pace to a marathon pace. When
Yeah.
you're running a sprint, you don't stop for water. When
Yep.
you're running a sprint, you just go full bore for the whole thing. But when you're running a marathon, you pause for water, you pause to change your shoes, right. That's just part of keeping the pace going. So right now, even in my pace, as I'm doing things, and 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 because of the adaptability, because things change, it actually takes more energy to put in the same amount of hours.
Mm.
So before, when I used to teach a conference, I knew how much energy expenditure it was going to be.
Right.
Now, when I teach a conference, it's going to be a higher level of energy expenditure
Yeah.
because of the challenge of travel, or even for me, staring at a camera, like like right now, you and I are doing this, and we're seeing each other on a screen, which really helps, so that
Yeah.
I'm not just talking to a disembodied voice.
Yes.
But I've done webinars. I still do webinars where I'm not actually seeing anybody. I'm just staring at that little dot on the camera like it's my best friend. And it's an
Yeah.
exhausting process.
Yeah.
So I need more rest now than I did before, because the learning curve is severe. And when you're trying to learn things, this is something I actually discovered from a friend who has some training in neurobiology. Our brains actually consume, on an average day, 20% of the energy expended in our bodies, our
Mm.
brains alone. And on passive days where we're sitting and thinking, where we're not actually up and running around. Have you ever had a long day of work, but it's not actually physical work,
Right.
but you're completely exhausted?
Yeah.
And we think that's just emotional exhaustion, and it is, but it's not just.
Mm.
On those days, our brain can be consuming over 50% of our actual physical energy of the day.
Wow.
Our brain is just like an electromagnet. It just
Yeah.
has electrical signals going back and forth. And
Yeah.
that's energy. Our brain is almost pure energy.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking new things, especially when we're having to learn new things constantly, there's an energy of expenditure of our brain that is absolutely exhausting, both physically and emotionally. So we have to keep our bodies healthy. We have to keep our relationships strong in order to compensate for the extra energy expenditure of a time when we're having to do everything and we're learning it as we go.
Wow. So take a nap.
Yep. Take a nap.
Take a
Take a
nap.
break.
Get your sabbatical now.
Yeah.
And for the love, take your vacation. Right.
Yeah. We need to. I heard an interview a few years ago. I think it was with LeBron James's trainer. And somebody asked him, "How do you train LeBron James to be a basketball player?" He laughed. He says, "Nobody does that. He's on the court. He's good. He's LeBron. He's fine." Then
Yeah.
what do you do? He says, "My entire job is to regulate his recovery.
Mm.
Everything I do is about making sure he recovers properly, because
Yeah.
once he's on the court, he'll be fine." And most of us as pastors are the same way. We're good at our energy expenditure. We know how to preach. We know how to pastor. We know how to do those things. We need to really regulate and really pay specific attention to our recovery so that we can go long term.
Yeah. Need somebody to help us turn it off.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, that's Carl, that's a good word. That's a good word. And that's something that, I pray for our crowd, that's something that we learn to do, because that's not taught in seminary.
It's not, and it's hard for us to even do it without feeling guilty. I've gotten past the point of feeling guilty when I take a nap. I'm good with it now, but it took
How
me
did
a
you do
long
that?
time.
How did you do that?
I learned how important rest is for my long-term effectiveness.
Okay. And that was through your own burnout, I'm guessing, or is that?
Yeah, when I went through the burnout, I realized, okay, I almost took myself out of ministry entirely.
Mm.
So it's better to take myself out of ministry for 2 weeks than to lose my place in ministry completely.
Mm.
And in fact, as pastors, we need to be doing that with our volunteers. Right now, your best volunteers may be burning themselves out because there's so much to do. And in our congregation, we have gone to our key volunteers on a regular basis and asked, when did you last have a day off? When did you last take a vacation? And if we look and we see they've been on Sunday after Sunday without a break for an extended period of time, we will take them out of the rotation for a Sunday or two. Better to lose them for a week or two than to lose them permanently. And when you do that, and you take care of each other that way, there's an appreciation for that also has long-term trust built into it, long-term team building built into it. So that's how I learned. I saw the negative effects of not taking proper breaks. And then I began to understand that taking a nap, taking a Sabbath is not a pull away from productivity. It is an essential part of productivity.
That's awesome. Karl, thank you for that. That's some wisdom, and that's some things that we need to have soak in. And so, Karl, really mean what I said earlier. I'm grateful for the ministry that you have in the church, the voice that you bring, and the work that you're doing with normal churches, right?
Yeah.
And the conversations that you're having there, and love that your tribe and our tribe seems to overlap so much. So if you are unaware of Karl and haven't dug in, you can go to karlvaters.com. You can buy every single book that he's ever written there. I think the most recent is the Church Recovery Guide, which
it is
might just maybe be appropriate for this season that we find ourselves in. And so we'll link off to all that down below. But Karl, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm so
Oh, you're very welcome, Matt. Good to be with you.